spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
We'll say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner. Welcome to 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football, the only show that gives you all the NFL analysis you need in just 30 minutes. It is Tuesday, October 11th, 2022. We are live on Facebook and Twitter. Tuesday means it is our fantasy look ahead. We'll be looking at week 6, the landscape. As far as fantasy football goes, we'll be talking waivers. We'll be talking start sit, buy low, sell high, the whole gamut. With me this week is John Danger Cole of Fantasy Football Blueprint. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, my friend. Glad to be here.
So you were telling me a little bit before all the different things you're involved in with fantasy. Kind of give me just a quick, and the listeners, a background about your fantasy expertise here.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. For the last 5 years or so, I've been doing a podcast called Draft for Upside with a couple of local friends. Drinking beer, draft beer. So, we're a bunch of beer industry people. And then started hooking up with Fantasy Football Blueprint to help them with their podcast and their new Discord channel, and helping with drroto.com, doing the same thing over there, helping with their podcasts and answering their Discord questions. I do a lot of waiver wire work. I do a lot of start sit work, and that's kind of where I live.
Beer and fantasy football. It sounds like you are the perfect guest for us here today. Thank you guys for joining and listening. We're going to get right into it. You know how we do it. We will have the 30-minute timer set up. We'll be taking turns asking questions. Before we get started, John, as the guest, you get to call the coin flip. Do you want to choose to receive or ask the first question?
Ooh, I will choose to receive, sir.
Awesome. I love it. Going on offense to start. 30 minutes of football with Legit Football starts now. So we always like to start these Tuesday episodes with the waiver wire. So it can be one name, it can be multiple names. We're now 5 weeks of data in. Who are some guys that are still possibly sitting on waiver wires that you're looking to target going into week 6?
I mean, clearly we've got some injuries, right? So Eno Benjamin, Kenneth Walker, top of my list this week.
Yep.
But if you're going to go away from the obvious, I am shocked how much Alec Pierce is still out there, and I am in on this kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I have him in both of my dynasty leagues and drafted him. It wasn't a free agency. I just thought that besides the fact that there's lots of opportunities for players to produce in Indianapolis, I liked his talent coming out of Cincinnati. I have him on my list. I've got Kenneth Walker and Eno as the first two obvious picks. How about Geno Smith? Do we think he's still on waiver wires at this point? I mean, the ESP, if you're looking at ESPN stats, it's like 49% unrostered. Right. Is Geno worth an ad?
I mean, I got him at most of my leagues right now are in Yahoo, and I'm looking at him at 37 right now.
Wow.
Absolutely worth an ad. I mean, we've got bye weeks, right? They've just started. You've got Derek Carr on a bye week. You've got Matt Stafford completely underperforming. You got Jared Goff, who a lot of people have rostered, who's on a bye week, who was a total letdown this week. Yeah, Geno Smith, man. If you go back and listen to I don't know about hype when he was coming out, but he was graded pretty well. Now it's taken him 10 years to get there, but he looks legit.
The curve there is a little bit longer than what we typically see with quarterbacks, and I think that's where people have had trouble, myself included, that it's like we've seen so much of Geno. How could a quarterback at this stage finally turn things around? Maybe it really was just a product of the system. A couple more names I'd like to throw out there. Jacoby Myers, who missed a few games with injury, came back. Bailey Zappi had over 100 yards and a touchdown last week. There's just not a lot of weapons there in New England, so I like him as an ad.
My policy is generally stay away from most New England players until enough injuries have happened where you have a Ramondre Stevenson sitting there as the guy. So in the Discord that I moderate, he's like the hottest name right now. Who do I trade for to get this guy? Man, unfortunately, this is the worst possible time to try to trade for Ramondre Stevenson. Running backs have not performed. Harris is out of the way. Whoever's got him probably is going to be starting him. So, I mean, you're going to be looking at trying to trade like a hot Gabe Davis or a slightly undervalued Deebo Samuel to try to get this guy away from teams. I don't know how possible it's going to be.
Right, and I still think we're going to see bad weeks with this New England offense. It's the defense that's going to win them games. So just the ceiling, I think, is capped there. On the running back front, what do you think about Jaylen Warren? He actually, now I know they took Najee out because they were not going to come back in that game, but he actually outsnapped Najee Harris in this game. He's actually been more efficient than Najee Harris so far. Is that worth a waiver wire pick beyond just a handcuff?
This is a tough one. A couple weeks ago, if we would have had this situation, yes. But we have the bye weeks right now. We have injuries right now. Tomlinson likes to feed the ball to one person. I'm just not sold that he's going to play committee. And I think you're going to have to see an injury or kind of a benching out of Najee Harris before Warren's really worth picking up right now. Now, if you've got a deep bench, if you're in a 10-team league and you've got 7-8 spots and you can stash him there to see what happens, sure. But I just have a hard time picking up this kid thinking that he's going to be worth it during all these bye weeks and injuries.
Last one I want to ask you about. Taysom Hill, fresh off 4 touchdowns, including a passing touchdown. Is this just like, do we need to make a move to get him? Or is it just like, nope, that's his production for the season. He just got it in 1 week.
Right. So here's the problem is I picked him up when Winston was hurt and on every league for free when he said he had all these cracked ribs or spinal injuries. And then I dropped him because I needed the space in every league. This is Taysom Hill. This is what he's going to do. 1 game out of 10 games, he's going to have a monster game. You're going to spend fab on him. You're going to waste a spot on him. You're going to slap him in that flex because he's tight end eligible in most leagues, and he's going to do nothing. I don't want to chase the points, but I guess we have to see what happens next week. And if you're not going to spend too much money on him, he's worth a stab. I guess. I just hate it. I hate it so much. It hurts my soul to even still talk about Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have the roster spot. You have to have a deep bench, either a really deep league or maybe you have extra bench spots on your league. If you're in like a standard league with just like maybe 5 or 6 bench spots, I'm not sure. Like you can't recapture that. Like that. No. That's the ceiling. We've already seen it.
Yeah, you can't go back, and he's gonna be just as likely to get you 3 points as 20.
Yep, agreed. All right, so. Ball is back on my side of the field. You may ask the next question.
That is a good question. I have been struggling with defenses this year. Are there any that you're just locked in on for the next couple of weeks? Where are you going with defenses? Because I'm just getting trashed by it the last couple of weeks. I just can't pick right.
Yeah, I've definitely been streaming defenses. I don't really have a defense that I've stuck with. I don't think we've seen this kind of dominant defense. I mean, you can go. The top 3 are going to be, Philadelphia, Dallas. Those are just from a pass rush perspective. When I like to play defenses, that's the biggest thing. Turnovers are very hard to predict, right? So you either want a team that can reduce the amount of points it lets up, but more specifically, can it get to the quarterback? Because that is what can create turnovers. Either you're going to get points per sack, you're going to cause some fumbles. We saw Dallas do that against the Rams, right? They were able to get the strip sack, which turned into a scoop and score touchdown. Eagles have been the same way. They've been able to get pressure, and they have a good secondary. So even if you don't get to the quarterback, you can make the quarterback make bad decisions. And then you've got James Bradbury, Darius Slay, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the back end to be able to kind of take advantage of that. I mean, there's always the 49ers too, for the same reason that they're going to get to the quarterback. They did lose Emmanuel Mosley, so we're talking about the back end. That's going to be a bit of a hit. But Charvarius Ward has been very good, a great signing for them. Hufanga has been like all-pro level safety. They're getting Jimmy Ward back. So those are the 3 defenses, probably the only 3 that I would say, hey, just keep them on your roster. But I do have some defenses that I'm liking to stream this week. And I'd love to have, if you have some additional names here. How about the Patriots? I mean, I know the Lions are the Lions, but they were the top scoring offense in the NFL prior to this last week. Bill Belichick shut him down. They're going up against the Browns. Brissett, former Patriot. I'm confident that Belichick is able to put together a game plan to limit the run game, limit Nick Chubb, which is largely the Browns offense, and make Brissett beat you, and that's proven to be, something that Cleveland's not going to do. The Rams defense taking on PJ
And I think you
Walker.
can go Cleveland too. I think you can take either side of that game. I think it's a low-scoring affair.
Yeah, I agree. This is a grudge match. Browns Patriots. You could be looking at like a what we saw in Houston Jacksonville, like a 13-6 type of game. Yeah. Rams against the Panthers. PJ Walker is going to be starting this game. There is always the interim head coach bump. I guess I'll ask you that. Do you believe there could be a bump? Steve Wilkes has 1 year of head coaching experience. Didn't go well in Arizona against a Rams defense that badly needs to bounce back. What are your thoughts?
That team's
there?
just a mess, man. That team is a mess. Baker was not the answer. DJ Moore has been totally disappointing. I thought I was getting him as a steal, as like my third wide receiver in a lot of drafts, and he hasn't even been start worthy. It's Christian McCaffrey or nothing. I like that call. I think Los Angeles desperately needs to get right, desperately, and this could be a game to get them going.
This almost seems like the scheduling gods have given a gift to the Rams. McVay under 500 for the second time ever, both times this season. Worst record he's ever had at this point in the season, gets to play a team that will probably be everybody's number 32 on their power rankings, fresh off firing their head coach and losing their quarterback, who has been awful. But I mean, there's still PJ Walker is a third string quarterback for a reason. And finally, Jacksonville. I've been surprised by the Jags defense this year. They're playing an Indianapolis team that they actually shut out a few weeks ago. And even in the games that they've lost, this defense has been competitive. Trayvon Walker has done great. Rushing passer Josh Allen, the Jacksonville Josh Allen. They've been able to create some turnovers. They've been able to limit the points, so I like them as a streamer. Do you have any other defenses you kind of have your eye on this week?
I don't know. I mean, they're about 50% rostered, so I'm in on the Chargers. I think Denver is just an absolute atrocious mess. If you can get anybody against Denver, I'm in. This is how I feel about a couple years ago when it was like literally anybody who plays the Lions. It's now Denver. Anybody that Denver's going up against, take that defense. So big on there. I kind of like Cincinnati and New Orleans. I don't know why. It's a gut feeling. Don't put your money on it. But if you're desperate and it's there, I just don't see Taysom Hill performing like that again. I just don't see it happening. And
you've still got Andy Dalton as the main quarterback. Taysom Hill, basically, those were chunk plays. Those were big plays. That's not something that's going to be consistent week to week. I don't hate that pick for Cincinnati.
Yeah, maybe more of a GPP DFS pick than a season-long play.
Right. Agreed. This is usually why I like to talk these defensive streaming. It's really more for DFS, I think. Although if you
it can be. It's been ugly this year, and I've struggled with it on season longs. Every time I think I get a winner, I get like -2 points.
I streamed the Dolphins defense this week, and that did not
exactly what I'm talking about was the Dolphins. That's who I played this week.
Yeah, very. I'm a Dolphins fan myself, so disappointing on multiple realms. Let's talk about we have about 5 minutes left till halftime. Let's talk about some buy low candidates. Are there any? I mean, it's getting harder and harder to buy low. We've got 5 weeks of data at this point, but are there anybody who's kind of popping up on your radar as somebody who you still think could produce more than what their value is right now, and you could trade for them fairly cheap?
How about going after a blockbuster and seeing if you can peel Chase off of anybody?
I actually love that. I love that. We've seen what his ceiling is. I'm a little concerned with this Bengals offense for a few reasons. One, I think defenses are playing them to limit the big play. You see a lot of too high safety shells. A lot of that, this is how you stop Patrick Mahomes. Last year with KC, we're seeing defenses do that with Joe Burrow. This year, top that with this offensive line has not been any better than last year. In fact, it's been worse because they can't run block. And Joe Mixon actually, I think, is third worst in the NFL in yards per carry among running backs with the minimum amount of carries. I mean, he's like third in carries and third worst in yards per carry. That's problematic. So I love that you can get Chase. Do you think the name Jamar Chase will make it so that you can't get him cheap? We're talking redraft here.
Yeah, I mean, cheap might not be the right word, but what other year, coming up, are you even going to be able to get him? I think you could get a fair value for Chase. And for me, a guy with superstar number 1 wide receiver ability that you might be able to get for a fair trade. Maybe you have an extra running back. Maybe you have Stevenson. Maybe you can pair Stevenson with, a good wide receiver too and pull Chase off somebody. I know it's not a buy low, but I think if you have an opportunity to get a number 1 guy with a team who's maybe disappointed in the draft capital they spent on the return they're getting for Chase, you have a shot.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think this is maybe the only time in his career where you have that his price will be at what it is. It may not be dirt cheap, but it's going to be lower than will probably ever be in his career. Jesus, man, I saw a question come in the chat. We'll get to that shortly. I want to go over a couple more buy low candidates. How about Jalen Waddle? I think that regardless of who the quarterback is, Tyreek Hill was in a walking boot to end that game. We've seen what his ceiling is. Through the first few weeks, he has had disappointing last 2 weeks, but he actually ran more routes than Tyreek did this most past week. And if Tyreek misses any time, Waddle is the weapon in Miami. I think there's a little bit of that, it's Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe Tua is not coming back for a while. Skylar Thompson, I think you can get Yeah, so I like.
I agree, and in that same line of thought, Diontae Johnson is probably a guy that somebody might be eager to get rid of right now.
Yes, actually, when we get to the sell high, he is on my sell high, so we're going to revisit that.
I like both ends, man. I think if you believe in him, I think you can get him for pretty cheap, and I think that if you don't believe in him, I think you can get good value for him. So, I mean, I could see both. It's one of those rare situations that I could buy him in certain situations and sell him in certain situations.
Yeah, so let's go. The last I want to mention a quick buy low, and then we actually got a couple questions in the chat.
Sure.
Travis Etienne. Mm-hmm. Who showed, actually had a very good week, but didn't touch the ball any more than James Robinson. Do we think he's on the verge of getting more production? Actually, Doug Peterson was asked in the press conference post-game about that, and they said, yeah, we should get Etienne more involved. Is he a buy low candidate here?
So I'm going to quote one of my good buddies I do a lot of podcasting with, Chris Emmerich, in the sense that, do we really know that Etienne is actually good at football? That's all we hear about for 2 years is how good Etienne is, and it just hasn't seen it yet. So I don't know if I'm trading much of value for him until I see what they're actually going to do. James Robinson's been electric. He's been good.
That's true. Although both of them were fairly disappointing against the Texans, but I think that could have been more play calling there.
So I am not on Etienne.
Okay, so let's. Jesus Man has a question here. Should I hold on to Schultz, Dalton Schultz? He has Tyler Conklin in his lineup. He put in a waiver claim to drop Conklin for Hayden Hurst. Hurst was actually on my waiver wire. I did not mention him earlier. Mm-hmm. John, I'll let you take this one.
I am out on Schultz. I don't like him in the way that Dallas has been running that offense. Here's the other deal. I don't ever hold two tight ends, period.
Yeah, same.
I either 100%. Pick one guy that I believe in, and that's Conklin for me. I think he's really proven a role in that offense. I like Hurst. He worries me with a little injury risk with him.
Yeah, I would say that the reason I had Hurst on the waiver wire is he's actually gotten, I think it was 7 or more targets in 3 or 4 games already this season. So that's a nice, from a volume perspective.
Absolutely
I'm with
solid.
you on being out on Schultz. That Dallas is just not utilizing. Dak comes back. Maybe that goes back up, but Schultz has also had injury issues. Of these 3, I'm definitely higher on Tyler Conklin. I think we've seen that he can be productive in that Jets offense. Jace, I see your question in the chat. We will get to that after halftime. That chime means we are at halftime. Quickly, guys, as always, if you have not already, go to legitfootball.com, sign up for your daily NFL briefing, 5 minutes or less. You're going to get caught up on all the top stories from around the league, including all of the injury news. We deliver it direct to you. We summarize what you need to know. It is 100% free. You can always unsubscribe. Legitfootball.com, enter your email address, sign up today. John, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about Fantasy Football Blueprint?
Absolutely. Fantasy Football Blueprint was really created to use the matrix draft tiered system. So it basically takes your league settings and spits out a automated tiered system for your draft. However, throughout the rest of the year, the website focuses on DFS. So if you play FanDuel, if you play DraftKings, we've got articles every single week for game theory. We've got best plays. We've got core lineups. We've got all of that for you. And we just kicked off NHL season 2. So we've got NHL for you. We've got MLB for you when that comes back around. We've got it all there. And it's just $27 for a full 365 days. So you get in now, you get our waiver wire articles, you get all of our DFS stuff. And next draft season, you get the draft cheat sheet already.
So basically, if you want a system that is going to help you analyze all this stuff, both before the season begins and DFS, fantasyfootballblueprint.com. I'll go ahead and put the banner up. Fantasy Football Blueprint. They're giving you the blueprint for what you need to know for fantasy. Nice and easy. All right. Halftime speech has been given. Players have been hydrated. Trainers have stretched out joints. John, are you ready to jump back into the second half here?
Let's do it.
Great. So I wanted to bring up, I mentioned earlier that we had a question. Jace Bodwin said, is DJ Moore worth more than Diontae Johnson? That's an interesting question.
Man, I like the offense in Pittsburgh's potential slightly better than Carolina for the wide receivers. But yeah, man, you're disappointed in DJ Moore. You're disappointed in Diontae Johnson. Get rid of them both, if you ask me. but I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. See if the spark with the new quarterback change in Pittsburgh. I'm more excited about that than a quarterback change in Carolina.
We have a lot more data with Diontae Johnson in Pittsburgh than we do with DJ Moore. We don't know how he's going to be with PJ Walker. We don't know how this offense is going to be. Carolina, basically by any statistic is the worst offense in the NFL right now. Getting a wide receiver on the worst offense in the NFL is typically a losing effort. Diontae Johnson is at least going to get targets. I think his ceiling is much lower. In general, he's more of a kind of a PPR guy anyway than say George Pickens. I really like Pickens' ceiling, and you've already seen the connection between Kenny Pickett and George Pickens. So while I'm not high on either of these guys, I would still put Diontae Johnson ahead of DJ Moore. Sad, Moore's got a lot of talent. Maybe they draft a rookie quarterback and Moore's value goes back up next year. I want to transition this into a conversation on sell high because I'll go ahead and mention Diontae Johnson is one of my sell high. You mentioned Diontae Johnson. Let's explore that a little bit more. Tell me kind of your thoughts on what you're looking to get in return maybe for a Diontae Johnson.
Well, I mean, right now it's all about running back depth, right? So I really hate position for position trades. I don't like wide receiver for wide receiver trades. I find them very much to be horizontal moves. They don't help anybody. The problem is we've got a lot of, what a year for the zero running back theory, first of all.
They're all proven right. It's
right. It's doing well. If you can get a guy like Diontae Johnson and get him over for, maybe you got the guy who's been holding on to Eno Benjamin who doesn't need him. Maybe you got the guy who's holding on to Kenneth Walker who doesn't need him. Maybe you can trade a Diontae Johnson for one of these guys who is in an injury role and in a higher, raised up injury role, plus a lower end wide receiver back in return. That's what I would be looking for.
So who are some other candidates that you are selling high on right now? You've already mentioned a few, but do you have another one that's like, hey, this is not sustainable, the production he's doing right now. Take advantage, get a good haul back for him.
Right. I mean, I've been saying about Cooper Kupp for a year and a half now, but he just keeps delivering.
He's clearly not going to fall off the cliff. He is that entire Rams offense.
You've got like the 30th ranked offense in the worst year of Matt Stafford's life, and Cooper Kupp is still like the number one wide receiver. I don't know how to handle that right now. It's been a little crazy.
I'll ask you this. How about
Sure.
What are your thoughts on Christian McCaffrey with the Panthers situation? We talked about DJ Moore. We talked about Carolina in general. He has at least proven, like Kupp in LA, to be a consistently productive fantasy asset on an absolutely dreadful offense. Is now the time, though, with all this uncertainty, coaching changes, different quarterback, to sell high on CMC?
Well, here's the deal. If you are a CMC owner, you took him with your first pick.
Yeah.
Okay. So you really kind of hamstrung probably the rest of your running back. So unless you have a guy who's just been outperforming where he should have been,
maybe you got a Dameon Pierce later.
Right?
Maybe you have like an Eno and a Kenneth Walker later. Then the situation just lucked out. Yeah.
I think you're going to have a really hard time replacing him for something of value in your lineup for what you had to give up to pick him number 2 or 3 overall. But yes, I mean, absolutely sell the guy while he's getting 25 points a game before he gets hurt again. Absolutely. If you can find a replacement enough for him, I'm all in on selling Christian McCaffrey.
Get multiple starters in return. I'm in a couple redraft leagues that started very badly. Not coincidentally, I had Kyle Pitts in both of them. He's basically crazy. I'm not the only one whose fantasy rosters he's crashed, but I did have Justin Jefferson in both of those leagues, and in both of those trades, I was able to trade Jefferson for 3 starters, a reduction in wide receiver, and then 2 other places, including tight end, where I needed a better producing asset. This is what I would say. If you're going to trade Christian McCaffrey, this is what you're looking for. Don't trade him for another stud. That doesn't really help you. Get multiple starters in return because running back situation has been awful. You mentioned zero running back. The running back situation, people are desperate. You can probably get a king's bounty for Christian McCaffrey because he's so consistent. Make sure you get multiple starters in return. How
about selling high on Marquise Brown before?
I like that. Am I
blanking on the guy who's about to come back?
DeAndre Hopkins.
There we go. Hopkins. I was blanking on his freaking name. What about selling on Marquise Brown, thinking maybe some of those targets come down when Hopkins comes back?
I think they have to come down. We saw Rondale Moore come back and start to get some of those targets, and he actually looked pretty good. But DeAndre Hopkins is the undisputed number 1 wide receiver. Kyler Murray loves just peppering him with targets. I'm not saying Marquise Brown's value is going to go away, but we might have kind of seen the peak here. So Hopkins suspended through 6 games. We are going into week 6, so his suspension will be served. I think the fact that the Cardinals have a losing record, they're fighting an uphill battle just to make it to the playoffs. You're going to see Kyler Murray, especially with how that offense has struggled early in games, start to really target DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, I love that as a pick. Sell high on Marquise Brown. Once again, this is as good as this price is going to get. So you don't want a player for player, wide receiver for wide receiver. Get something that you need. If you have a Kyle Pitts, use this as an opportunity to get maybe a wide receiver, maybe a George Pickens, who's like kind of coming up and has not quite hit there yet, and get like a tight end in return, like a Gerald Everett or Tyler Higbee, if you can get him, for a guy like Marquise Brown, who has had multiple solid weeks in a row. I love that. I'm going to ask you about 2 more running backs in the sell high category. Do we think we can still sell Michael Carter at this point? He still scored touchdowns. Breece Hall was a coming out party against Miami, but Michael Carter still had over 17 full PPR points last week. Do we think we can still get something for him?
If you have the depth to get rid of a productive running back, yes, they are hot commodities right now. Absolutely.
How about Melvin Gordon? On that same route, because he came in, everybody said, oh, Javonte Williams is gone, but Mike Boone basically split touches, and guess what? Gordon fumbled again.
Yeah, I'm all on board selling all of my Denver pieces. If you think somebody is high on Gordon because he's got the role without Jamal, yes.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't like Gordon as the lead back. Besides the fact that Mike Boone comes in, they immediately split carries. Boone was more efficient, and Gordon had the fumble. I'm selling high on Michael Carter too, only because I don't think that production continues after what they just saw Breece Hall do. And every week, Breece Hall's share has increased while Michael Carter's has decreased. I think you'll see him get less of the goal line work, and it'll just be the Breece Hall show in New York. So I'm selling
Carter
high on
is
those
talented,
guys.
so you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. It's just maybe time to move on.
It's an opportunity situation, which is, I think, if you're gonna, his value is only gonna go down from here. The fact that he still was able to score over 17 PPR points, now would be the time. All right, we got another question in the chat from just A. I love the avatar there of the microscope. Would you trade Hopkins? We just talked about DeAndre Hopkins, about to come back, one more game out, and Breece Hall for Courtland Sutton and Aaron Jones of full PPR?
I would not do it. You held on to Hopkins this whole time.
Yeah.
You can't trade him right before he's there. Breece Hall is a star that's rising. Sutton is hampered by a really bad offense right now, and Wilson's hurt. Although I do like Aaron Jones. I'm a big Aaron Jones fan. But I think, man, I can't imagine drafting Hopkins, sitting on him for 6 weeks, and then getting rid of him before he plays a game. I just can't do it.
And Breece Hall, yes, his value is very high, but I don't think that's going back down. We literally were just talking about how Hall is he's ready to take over this Jets running back room. He had the first 100-yard receiving for a Jets running back since 2011. 11 years. This guy is about to explode. Hopkins is about to explode simply because he has not played. I love that you mentioned, like, you held on to him for this long.
That's right.
Now is not the time to trade him. Hopkins could...
Unless for some reason somebody dropped him in your league and you picked him up, and now you're just using him for equity. But Aaron Jones also has a history of getting bruised up, and they are going to mix Dylan more in as the weather turns colder up there. It's going to be more of a Dylan game. So I like Aaron Jones a lot, but I'm sticking with your original players.
Yeah, I agree with that. Aaron Jones, solid, but there's always the possibility that you're going to have a Dylan game, whereas I don't think we're going to see Michael Carter games going forward. Breece Hall's got that. Hopkins, so much higher ceiling than Sutton. We're both in agreement on this. Another question, Jeb Armstrong said, should I trade Jonathan Taylor for Diggs and Elijah Mitchell? My other running backs are Barkley Hall. Is this, Jeb, can you let us know, is this dynasty? Because Elijah Mitchell is probably, he's not coming back anytime soon. Got Saquon Barkley, Breece Hall. I don't know that I would get rid of Jonathan Taylor at this point.
I mean, Diggs, man, I'd love to have him on my team. But Taylor comes back healthy and you keep Barkley and Taylor. I don't know what's happening with Mitchell. Mitchell might come back, play one game, get hurt again. I just can't. I can't do it.
And Fred Wilson has been good. Or Jeff Wilson has been good.
Wilson,
so it's like standard, he said.
I definitely would hit that person back with a counter offer and put a running back who actually has a role in, because I don't mind the idea.
Correct. Yeah, I like the idea of getting Diggs, especially because Barkley has been the best running back in fantasy so far. Breece Hall, we've talked multiple times about how he is elevating right now, but Elijah Mitchell is basically, in my mind, in redraft, kind of a worthless asset at this point.
Yep.
So if you can get even one of these backups, like a Jalen Warren, who could, Eno Benjamin, who, his value is probably pretty high right now. Jonathan Taylor still has that name recognition. When he gets back healthy, I still think Indy's going to feed him. He's going to have the volume. If Stefon Diggs has the ability to finish as a top 5 wide receiver or better. So if you can get a better running back than Elijah, I'm with you.
Just a quick plug for Fantasy Football Blueprint. At the beginning of the year, people were asking about Barkley, and I was answering on behalf of the page saying that he was the best back beyond the first three and was getting shredded in the replies. And I just like to say, neener, neener, neener.
I was very high on Barkley. I wanted to target him, but I wasn't taking a first round pick.
Right.
But every time my second round pick came up to he was gone. So I didn't get a chance to take advantage of any shares, but I'm with you. I was high on Barkley coming into this year. Jeb Armstrong, slight tweak. He said, would you do the deal straight up for Jefferson? So Jonathan Taylor straight up for just Jefferson.
Man, probably in a vacuum.
If you've got Barkley and Hall in a correct. Without
in a vacuum,
we don't know
yes.
how many other teams, what the rest of your roster looks like. But
I don't know if you get somebody to do that. Maybe. I mean,
right. If this is an offer on the table, I'm kind of leaning towards it because you already have Hall and Barkley. If JT comes about, that's an awesome 3-way running back room. But
it is.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson is as money as it gets, short of maybe Cooper Kupp in the wide receiver room. Yep. We've talked about Kyle Pitts a few times. I want to ask you, can he rebound? Are we out on Pitts for good? We're not even talking about sell high, buy low. We're just like, can he actually recover from his dreadful start with all the hype that he had to start the year?
Man, I'm scrolling through my rankings for tight ends right now, and he's like not in the first 2 pages. I think that he has been relied on to block a whole lot.
Yeah.
I don't see that changing. Cordell Patterson going out doesn't help that. Mariota needs somebody to keep the pocket clean for him. He's not good enough to do it on his own. I'm out on Pitts. I don't, if you can get something for him, do it, but I am not trading for him.
And this is an offense that their success is predicated on the run game. The reason they have been in games and very competitive, they won 2 in a row. Their biggest loss has been 6 points, and that was against the Bucs, and they even had a chance at the end of that game. It has been because they've been able to be successful on the ground. So they're not looking to air it out. So even if they do use him more, you're not talking about some of these other tight ends. Higbee is the only other weapon right now in LA. Like he's getting 8 to 10 targets a game. So yeah,
it just reminds me so much of George Kittle when the 49ers had their line beat up so bad, was it 2 years ago? And Kittle
Trent
just
Williams
disappeared.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Kittle just disappeared. And it wasn't because they weren't trying to use him. It was because they needed his body on the line. And I feel like that's what's happening to Kyle Pitts right now.
All right. We have a few more questions. We got about 2 minutes left. Jonathan Whitaker says, I have Jonathan Taylor and Breece Hall starting, Terry McLaurin at the flex. The rest of my running backs, J.K. Dobbins, Cordell Patterson, IR. Should I pick up Eno just for this week or Brian Robinson long-term?
Interesting. I'm looking at those running backs and not really thinking I need long-term. So if you need some answers right now, it's Eno. If you have your full lineup set and you're good, sure, go ahead and stash Robinson.
I like Eno as a long-term play. I mean,
sure
I said all in the offseason, James Conner has never played a full season, even in Pittsburgh. Even last year when he scored 20 touchdowns, he still missed a couple games. Guess who filled in for that game when he missed? I was at that game because it was against the Niners at Levi's. It was Eno Benjamin. He comes in. He's efficient on the run and in the pass, scored a touchdown. I like Eno. If you can get him on your waiver wires, go ahead and do that. Tony Alvarez says, Dynasty League PPR, Mike Williams for Marcus Mariota and Josh Jacobs. Mariota is just for some depth, but really targeting Jacobs. He's got his wide receiver core as A.J. Brown, Amari Cooper, Hollywood Brown. We talked about him. Alec Pierce and DK. That's a nice little roster there.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can move a wide receiver and get a starting running back, do it. Done.
Right. And Keenan Allen's going to come back at some point. He's going to take some of those shares away. Mike Williams has always been kind of a boomer bust. His boom can be high, granted, but Josh Jacobs has proven now in this McDaniels offense, like he's legit. We're talking about 0 running backs. They're so thin. If you could get a guy who can consistently produce, Jacobs is running better than I've ever seen him run. So I'm with you there. Mariota, who cares? That's not part of it. It's Mike Williams. Get Josh Jacobs. Get a stud running back. They're so rare in the 2022 season.
Get it done.
That gong means we are at the end of the game. Post-game press conference, John. How do you feel your team performs today?
Oh, man. I think we knocked it out of the park, personally.
Oh, yeah. came to play, took the ball. It was a high-scoring affair, and those are always exciting. Guys, thank you as always for coming in the chat, asking us these fantasy questions. Didn't get any start-sit questions today, but that's all right. We will do that again Thursday. I have the Pro Football Demon on. We're going to start, I think, a little earlier. I think 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. We'll be answering live viewer fantasy questions ahead of Week 6. John, tell everybody one more time where they can find you and your stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Head over to Fantasy Football Blueprint, $27 for the rest of the next 365 days. You get all of our DFS stuff. You get our hockey articles. You get our literally everything. Plus, you get the draft guide for next year.
No brainer, guys. Go check out fantasyfootballblueprint.com, legitfootball.com for your NFL news. We will be back tomorrow with our weekly Power Rankings draft. Jimmy Ray from the NFL Stats Twitter account. We will be taking turns drafting our Power Rankings and then releasing them on Twitter. That's going to be at 6 Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I mentioned that we have the live viewer question Thursday Night Football Thursday, game picks and preview on Friday at 1 Eastern. Make sure to subscribe to get all of this. Thank you for listening and watching. This has been 30 Minutes of Football with Legit Football. We'll see you tomorrow. That's spicy. Jimmy Garoppolo on there could be a benefit, but have they kind of burned that bridge?
I will say this. Gardner Minshew is the best backup in the NFL.
I love Gardner.